All right, so if I'm here, can you hear me? People at home. I assume the people in the room can hear me because I have a loud mouth. Um,
That is better. Yes.
Better? All right, so right here is our sweet spot where we need to be so you all can hear me and other presenters. So this is our mark. This is our X. All right. Thank you so much. Now we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. I appreciate you all. So let's check out some of our guidelines. We have been in person. We've been online for a long time, so a lot of you know this. My preference, unless previously prompted, if you're on Zoom, is to talk in the chat versus using your audio. That's mostly so that we don't have the issue of people talking over each other and nobody hearing anything. Not trying to, avoid your voice or silence you. I want you to be active in the chat because we're building our community here. Keep water, coffee close, change your name, use your pronouns so we can be respectful of those, and your organization. I want to know where you're from. And if you have any questions, as you all know, please message us. Message me or Mon, so that we can make sure that your experience is going well. All right, in person, please create your name tag. So again, we know who you are, what your pronouns are, so we can respect you. Use your note cards and sticky notes that are on your table to write down notes, to jot down questions so you remember them, so we can get those answered. And again, come to us. You have access to us in person if you have any questions or anything, and directing questions that you have to me, to Chuck, to Hala, who are outside right now handling things, or Mackenzie, who's helping us host today. So we're hitting on today's agenda. I'm hopeful you can hear me out. Okay. So folks in person have been eating lunch and getting to know each other and registering. We just had a wonderful welcome from the Vice President of Student Affairs at Columbia State. Thank you so much for that. And I know she has to head out soon. Right now, we're going to talk to Kayla Griffin about, since it's over, about the basis of voter engagement. We're going to be talking to Amanda Grandjean, the Director of Elections and Assistant Secretary of State, regarding what it looks like to vote in Ohio as well. And then we'll be going into our student panels. When we go into our student panels, you all will be in breakout rooms on Zoom, and you'll be broken up out of this room into the next room over, either based on whether you want to talk to administrators or you want to chat with students. And then we'll come back together to talk about what's on the ballot in Ohio. We're going to talk about celebrating civic holidays on your campuses, and making those traditions on your campuses. And we are going to talk about Senate Bill 320. We're going to do some action planning with votes and ballots, which I don't have any of you done votes and ballots before? Can I have a show of hands if you have? So it's pretty cool. It's a game that we use within our coalition, within the Student Learn Students Vote Coalition, to talk about doing democracy on campus and planning democracy on campus. So it's fun, it's interactive, and I'm hopeful that it gives you some gems to take home with you back to your campus. And then we'll do remarks and closing. So sounds like we have a lot to get through. I'm confident that we will get y'all out of here around 4 with some good learning to take back to your campuses this fall through our midterm elections.
Right now. I'll use that.
Yeah, we'll give you.
Good afternoon. My goodness. How is everybody today? Okay, let me see if this, okay, great. So my name is Kayla Griffin. I'm from All Voting is Local, Ohio. I'm very glad to be with you all. I'm the state director in Ohio, and our focus is on the administration of elections. Very different from a lot of the other organizations who are voting rights orgs in the space, because we focus very narrowly on how elections are run, the administration of them, how it is carried out. And so a lot of folks often focus on legislation, they do lobbying, they do litigation, and we kind of stay out those lanes. We work with our partners like Campus Vote Project and those throughout the state to make sure that folks who are on the ground carrying out elections know how to do it properly, and they are being held accountable. And so that is a little bit of our work. We've been in Ohio since 2018. Our organization is in 8 states, and we are very happy to be here. So thank you to our partners for this. I'm glad to be in person with you guys, and we'll get started. So I'm talking about voter registration, talking about the logistics of voter registration and what you need to know on this upcoming election. We are in election season. So one of the misnomers that we have is that, you know, there's election day and then it's over. No, in Ohio and other states, there is a season for elections. So like football season, election season, it kind of coincides, right? There is so much that happens before November 8th that we need to jump into and we need to be ready for. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. What it looks like on the march up to November 8th. Okay. So what should you know? The first thing that is really important to know when it comes to elections are the dates and the times. Knowing the dates and the times can help resolve so many issues and so many problems that folks tend to run into. And so we're going to go over some of the dates and times, and then we're going to go over like how to vote. How many, by show of hands, are registered voters? Very good. That's everybody in the room. Have folks moved since their last election? Has anybody moved? I got 1, 2, 3. Have you guys updated your voter registration? Okay, very good. That goes for you guys online as well. So if you are a registered voter, like we love to see it. But if you have moved, you have to make sure that your voter registration is updated as well, right? Because where you vote and who you vote for is tied to where you live. So here's a list of dates that you guys should know. These are, I pulled this right off of the Secretary of State's election calendar. So October 11th is the last day to register to vote. It is the last day to update your registration. And then immediately following on October 12th begins early voting. So we'll talk a little bit about voter registration. I don't know that I'll actually have to do a lot of logistics about voter registration because you guys are voters. But immediately after election, October 11th is early voting. So what should I do now? You know, how do I make a plan? One of the things that we stress for folks who are voters and voter advocates is us having a plan, but talking to our friends and family about also making a plan. That's one of the most important things that we can do when we're talking about getting out the vote. In the election world, we call it vote tripling. So like talking to 3 people and saying, hey, I already made a plan, I'm going to vote, or I'm voting by mail, this is what I'm doing. What's your plan as well? And when we start to engage with people around election opportunities, then it often allows us to triple the vote and turn people out. So this is the Secretary of State. This is a screenshot of the Secretary of State's voter registration online portal. It is probably one of the most secured options that we have when it comes to elections. Like, we are always at Auto Voting is Local. We're looking at folks on voter registration cards through the Board of Elections and folks who are turning in cards. And oftentimes people make mistakes on those voter registration cards. It is very difficult to try to, talk people through. You need to do your date of birth here and not today's date, or they invert numbers. Or some folks, sometimes I'm registering people and some folks don't know how to do a signature. And so these are some of the things that you run into when you are actually registering people to vote. So I try to send people directly to the Secretary of State's website because it is a fail-safe proof. You can, they will stop you if you are missing information. And so if you know folks who need to register to vote, you can pull it up right on your phone. It is mobile friendly. So you don't need a computer. You can pull it up right on your phone. I tell people the easiest way to remember is voteohio.gov. Just voteohio.gov, and that's how we get to the Secretary of State's site. I don't know if I have to click it or arrow it. Okay, here is an example of the voter registration card, and these are the prominent information that you guys need to know. If you are filling this out, I urge you, go in, take, if you're going to do some voter registration or tabling and stuff like that, when you go to the Board of Elections to pick them up, have a conversation with the folks at the Board of Elections and ask them, hey, what is it that I need to make sure that I'm having folks filling this out do to ensure that their voter registration card is counted and is valid. So everyone at the Board of Elections, they are amazing. They are friendly. They're the best folks in Ohio when it comes to running the elections. They want to make sure that folks have their registrations done properly, because honestly, it puts more work on them if it's not done. They have to go out and try to hunt folks down and fix it. And so we want to make sure that you guys are doing it the right way. So have a conversation with the folks at the board when you're going to do tabling. If you're hosting something at your campus and you're going to pick up a stack of voter registration cards, they can help you navigate those cards and tell you exactly what you need to do when it comes to having folks fill that out. I don't know if this is going to play. I don't know if we're hooked up to audio, but for those who have moved, even those online, I urge you to check your voter registration. Look it up and make sure that you have you're registered at your current address. So this is what it looks like over here. It's a voter search. You simply put in your first name, your last name, and your county, and it will pop up where you are registered to vote. So I would urge everybody to do this before October 11th, just to make sure that there are no errors or glitches. We have voter maintenance within our state. So sometimes people are cleaned off of the rolls if they don't vote, if they don't update their registration. So I urge everybody, right before election, the first thing on your voter plan should be check your voter status, make sure you're registered at your current address. I'm gonna hit play. We're gonna cross our fingers and see if this actually works. Folks can hear it. Okay, no audio. We're gonna skip the video. I don't know how to get the audio. It's not plugged in. Okay, so this is your voter registration information. It's a little short video about checking your voter registration. Very simple, very easy, but you guys are pros. Everybody is registered. And so I hope that, before October 11th, you guys are gonna go check, and you're gonna check those that live with you. You're gonna check everybody in your household, your roommates, your family, your friends, and tell them, hey, we got an election coming up. It's very consequential, so you guys need to go. There's people in the waiting room. Okay, so when we are after we're registered to vote, that's the first step. But we actually have to engage in the election. We have to get out the vote. We have to show up and make our voices heard. And so there are a few ways to do that. In Ohio, we have no fault absentee ballots. So that means that you can vote early or you can vote by mail. It is a quick and simple way. I like to vote early. Personally, I don't want to go on election day. I want to make sure, partly because I'm a volunteer, so I don't have time on election day. But you can request your vote by mail ballot. And you could actually do that now. If you are a registered voter, the Secretary of State's office has already started to send out these applications to your registration location. Has anybody received theirs yet? Okay, I got a handful of folks. I received mine last week. So as soon as I got my application, I filled it out, I put a stamp on it, and I put it back in the mail because that's how I choose to vote. So I would urge you guys, check your mail. When I was in college, I never ever checked my mail. So that might be a thing, but like check your mail to see if you have an application in your mail, because the Secretary of State sends it out to everybody who is registered to vote. So if you haven't gotten one yet, and it's coming up on the end of the month and you still haven't gotten one, that's probably an indication that you need to check your registration, because everyone is receiving those who is registered to vote in the state. I'm gonna skip this video because the video is not playing. But here is a screenshot of the application. You can also get it online. So they have like a PDF form. It's fillable. It's really easy. The key though, you have to print it off and send it back. There is not a portal that we can just fill it out and hit send on and it goes through. We actually have to print it. So this is the application. It asks for your name, your address. If you are residing at a different address, from where you are registered to vote. Like if you're registered to vote at mom or dad's house, like I was when I was in college, but I was off at Kent State University. Any flashes in the room? Nobody? Okay. I was off at Kent, so I got my ballot sent to my dorm, and then I just put a stamp on it and sent it back in the mail. So they make provisions for that as well.
Jeff Aker said he is also.
I see you, Jeff. I see you. Okay, so if you are not like me and you don't want to vote by mail, your options are voting in person, right? And so in Ohio, there is one early vote location for every county. That is your Board of Elections. So you can show up to your Board of Elections and you can go and vote early. If you're a first-time voter, oftentimes they have you ring the bell, like it's a whole production, it's a thing. But if you are going to vote on election day, you can check to see, it says find my voting information by address, and it'll tell you where you are to go to vote. I would say, if you're doing this, check it like the 2 days before you're going to vote, because you might have had changes. So, a location may have flooded, the electricity went out, something, and they might have needed to change the location. So make sure you know where you're going to vote. And all of this is found on the Secretary of State's website. It's very easy, very user-friendly. So you should not have any trouble with finding where you need to vote. And if you are like me, I'm gonna skip videos, but I vote early so that I can volunteer on election day. So there is so much for us to do on election day, as opposed to like just showing up to vote. If we're really engaged and we want to engage our communities, I really tell folks that there are amazing options to plug into. One, you can be a poll worker. So you go, you work the actual polls on election day and you earn money. So that's a really cool thing about our democratic system. Like folks can go and see how it works behind the scenes. You can sign up at your county board of elections. You can work and you get a little bit of paycheck for it. You got to go through a small training so you can know what's going on. But this is the best way to see how democracy works behind the scenes, so that when we are talking to folks outside of election season, we're really knowledgeable about the logistics of election day and explaining to people what happens when they cast their ballot. All Voting is Local, we have partnered with Power the Polls, so they are a great resource. They have like toolkits and everything for like poll worker recruitment, but the Secretary of State's website, like literally on everything, it pops up and says, do you want to be a poll worker? Like we need folks who are poll workers, and so it's always popping up. So if you go to the Secretary of State's website, you can sign up to be a poll worker there as well. Okay, One of the things that we don't often talk about is like post-election process, right? And so that's something that All Voting is Local is really cued in on, is the post-election. Election day is November 8th, but there's these things that happen after November 8th. So when we are watching the news on election day and like results are coming up, those are, it should say unofficial results, right? Because there is a thing called canvassing, and like folks have to actually like all the counties have to certify before we get the official results. And so those are opportunities for you to also plug in, because you can go and be an observer. You can go to your county board of election and say, hey, I want to observe how the count happens. And they'll invite you in. You can't touch anything, you can't mess with anything, but you can go and just watch the process. It's kind of like, it's uneventful often because they're just counting ballots. But it is an opportunity, another opportunity for us to see how elections run and what happens after election day, so that we can know what's going on. So registering to vote is not the end all be all. Like, we actually have to get out the vote. We need to actually make sure that we're showing up and that our friends and our families and everybody in between are showing up as well. It makes no sense for us to have millions of folks registered in our state, but only 55%, showing up to vote in elections. And these elections are so consequential. And so I am going to, I don't know, we started a little late, so I don't know where my time is, but I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna pause and see if there are any questions. Even for the folks in the chat. Yes, ma'am.
My only question is more like a comment, but if you move, be sure that your new place you registered is the same address as what's on your driver's license, because my daughter had trouble voting because she had updated her voter registration, but not updated her driver's license, and she had the wrong ID basically.
So you shouldn't be turned away if your ID is not expired, if it's still a current ID, you shouldn't be turned away, because in Ohio, we have various forms of identification that can be used. And so like when I was in college, I moved around a lot and I never went to go update my ID. But they'll ask you what is your voter registration? And you'll just simply tell them this is the address. So you should not be turned away if your ID is not up to date. It just shouldn't be expired, okay? So you also can bring in a utility bill, or you can bring in a bank statement. If you have a military ID, you can bring that in as well. And so Ohio has some flexibility when it comes to voter IDs. And all of that is on the Secretary of State's website again, so you can read through. But you should know that. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about provisional ballots, and if you are turned away, how can you fight that?
Yeah, so provisional ballots is the ballot of last resort. That is what it's termed as, because we want to make sure that nobody leaves without having the opportunity to cast their ballot. And so if there is something that arises and they say, well, we don't have you in the system, we can't find you on the rolls, ask for a provisional ballot, right? This is a ballot that you can still, it has all of the same parties and people on the ballot. You'll be able to mark your ballot off. They'll set it aside, so it won't be counted immediately. And then you have a window of 7 days to cure the ballot, so to fix it. So you can either come in and bring in this is what I needed to show you to prove it, or you call the Board of Elections and say, hey, I had to vote provisionally. Can you pull my ballot and see if you were able to find me on the rolls, and what do I need to do to fix it, right? And so we want to make sure it really is an opportunity to make sure that folks have the opportunity to vote without leaving the election site. There's this other little nuance that's right church, wrong pew. It's very particular. So you might be at the wrong location. If you haven't checked your voter registration or your voting location, and you show up at the wrong location, they'll tell you, well, you're supposed to be 2 blocks away at the school around the corner. If you're well, I don't have time and I need to vote, they'll give you a ballot, but that ballot won't be counted because you're supposed to be in a different location. Okay, and so provisional ballot is the ballot of the last resort. It is an opportunity for us to make sure that our vote is counted. And if there's something that is persnickety and we need to fix it, we can have the opportunity to cure it. So that's why it's important to know, like, the post-election, like after election day is not the last day. There is still opportunity to fix things that come up and arise.
There's a question in the chat, excuse me, and it said, is moving outside the state the same process? So I'm assuming we're changing here.
So when you move outside of the state, you should cancel your voter registration in Ohio and then re-register in that same state. I'm not sure what deadlines that other states have, but that should be well listed on the Secretary of State's website, on their Secretary of State's website as well. And so when you move outside of the state, you want to cancel your Ohio voter registration and then register in a new state.
And I also, to Emma's question, if you have questions about how to find a state's Secretary of State's office, you can use our state student guides, and we keep those links up to date on our website so that you have, you don't have to travel the whole World Wide Web to find that information.
Is that all the questions online?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions in the room? Well, with that, I will yield the floor.
Thank you. So our next session is with our Assistant Secretary of State and Director of Elections, Amanda Granting. And I want to make sure, well, first of all, I need to make sure that I'm in the area that you all said you all can hear. So first I want to say that Amanda Granting, she's first the Director of Elections and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for our current Secretary of State, Frank LaRose. And she is a member of the National Association of Election Directors, the National Association of Secretaries of State, Secretaries of State, the Election Assistance Commission, Standards Board, Bipartisan Policy Centers, Task Force, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Election Data and Science Lab Advisory Board, and an executive committee member of the Electronic Registration Information Center. She's also a Miami University grad, which I'm really excited about. And she decided to stay here and work in our wonderful state. And I also want to say, because I don't want to take up her time on the floor, that she has been super supportive of us doing work in Ohio and our summits. And I'm super excited that she was able to come in person because I wasn't sure that was going to happen. And she, decided to join us in person. I'm really excited about that because we've been virtual for so long and she always supported us and now she's here. So I'm going to yield the floor to her and then we're going to get into elections in Ohio again. And, this is the expert. So all the questions that she might have that are lingering, let's go.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you? I don't know. That was a very kind introduction, probably way too generous. I'm gonna get set up here really quick, so I apologize. And it is great to be here in person with all of you. Can the folks online hear me okay? Any response? I want to make sure that.
They said, yes, we can.
Okay, great, awesome. Well, good afternoon. I know it's a beautiful day out and it's the end of the week, so all of you are probably like getting itchy to continue on with your day here, but it's wonderful to be here with you and to talk about voter registration today and elections in the state of Ohio. So I know how many of you are Ohioans? Okay, so the majority of you. Awesome. Well, excellent. I know I got a list of questions from Alexis, which was great. And I'm happy to run through the answers to those questions if you want to ask them, whatever you want.
So our first question is a question around what role could and should students play in the registration process?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, students should be engaged in the democratic and electoral process in general, right? It's really disheartening, and I'm sure we all have friends, myself included, who may complain on social media or obviously express their opinion. But when you go to ask them, well, did you vote or are you participating? Sometimes the answer is no. So I would just encourage everybody should be participating in the electoral process and making sure that their voice is in fact heard, because it's so important to participate. I actually just spoke last week to an OSU class at Ohio State and a Miami University class this week, and told them the same thing. And it's just so important to stay engaged and stay a participant in our democratic process right now. And so what role should you all be playing in that? Well, first and foremost, one thing we like to say in our office is informed voters inform voters. So in the world of social media and a million different pieces of information out there all the time, it's so important to make sure that you guys are getting accurate information and correct information. And we like to say this all the time, but the trusted sources, so you mentioned two organizations that we're really involved in, which is the National Association of Secretaries of States and State Elections Directors. They did a trusted sources campaign following the 2020 election to really emphasize the lack of, mis and or the prevalence of mis and disinformation on social media. So making sure that we are getting the right information. And I appreciate you mentioning our website. Thank you for that. And the Franklin County, I'm going to pick on Franklin County Board of Elections because we're in Franklin County right now, but the Board of Elections website is where that accurate information is going to be. So make sure you're going to either our website or the Franklin County Board of Elections website, giving the Franklin County Board of Elections a call, giving our office a call, going straight to the source, as opposed to maybe something that you heard on TikTok, right? Or something that you saw on Twitter, just making sure that you're getting that correct information. And of course, always you should share that information with your colleagues and your friends and your classmates. And if something you're like, oh, I saw this online, it doesn't really quite look right, call us, that there's, I have a whole staff of people who all we do all day long is answer calls from the public on various voting related issues. And same with the Franklin County Board of Elections. I know that Franklin County Board of Elections has the same system and answers the public's questions all the time. So that's, the biggest thing is really getting accurate information out there and making sure that you're informed with that accurate information as well. So one thing I would caution is you may hear on campus, and I told the OSU class and the Miami class this in the same way. Be very careful of third-party voter registration drives, which are very, at times very well intentioned, but the only way to register to vote online in the state of Ohio is through the Secretary of State's website. That's the only way. A lot of third-party groups may, again, be very well intentioned, but what they're ultimately doing is collecting your data and not registering you to vote, because legally and technologically, the only way for an online voter registration to go through is if it comes through the Secretary of State's website. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that and be really mindful of that. The best place for all of these resources is voteohio.gov. You literally just put that in your browser, all of the resources will pop up. Online voter registration and other information as well. So just be mindful of that. And then of course, I'm going to go through the requirements for online voter registration. And of course, you don't have to register to vote online. There's certain requirements from a legal perspective that are in state law that are required component parts for the record to go through. And those are the requirements that the General Assembly has set forth in Ohio law. But of course, you can always register to vote on a paper form, right? So you just fill out that paper form. It's on our website. You can download it, sign it, return it to the Board of Elections. So 2 very easy ways to vote online. You need to have an Ohio driver's license or an Ohio ID card number for online voter registration, your name, your date of birth, your address, and the last 4 of your social security number. So all of those component pieces of the requirements check against the BMV's data, right? So that's how there's a verification online that you are who you said you are. From a security perspective, that's really important because we don't want to have fraudulent or inaccurate voter registrations online, and that protects our system as well. So that's sort of the role that students can and should play is knowing the rules, knowing the requirements, being informed voters and telling others how they can register to vote and participating. That's the number 1 thing that you should be doing is participating.
I'm going to skip around a little bit. And my next question is, what support could and should come from local BLEs to support student engagement and voter registration and nonpartisan, endorsing voter engagement?
Yeah, so I know so there's 88 counties in the state of Ohio. I don't know if a lot of people don't know that. So lots of counties in Ohio, and each of them, another little known fact is that each Board of Elections is run by a bipartisan board. So there are 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats that are the appointed members of the Board of Elections. There's also a director and a deputy director who is a Republican and a Democrat. And the organization of the board itself is very unique to the state of Ohio. So when you compare a lot of states to each other, very few have the same setup that Ohio has, which we think is a very good thing. I think that bipartisan representation is very important. It's that checks and balance. Nothing is happening in the voting system or in our process without the approval of both that Republican and that Democrat at the same time. So we think that's really important. In a lot of other states, who is running their elections actually is an elected official of just one political party. So there isn't that bipartisan representation throughout the process. So it's a really important safeguard that we think is excellent. So just knowing that, so there's typically really 6 folks from a bipartisan capacity that are in charge at that Board of Elections: the director, the deputy director, and the 4 board members. So with that being said, the doors are open. It's a public office. I encourage you. Has anybody here actually been physically to the Board of Elections, whether you've been early voting or? Okay, awesome, great. So if you haven't been, that's totally fine. But public office, I encourage you guys to go check it out. Ask for a tour. It's really important for you to see how all this works. We encourage everybody to know where their Board of Elections is. In an experiment with voting, right? There's so many different ways to vote in Ohio. You can both vote by mail, you can vote in person early, you can vote at your polling location. Try out, the different methods of voting to see what works best for you and what you like to do best. But nonetheless, I think a lot of boards, particularly, are aware of college campuses in their county. For example, obviously, Ohio State, Columbus State, many different colleges and universities in Franklin County, and they have dedicated staff at Franklin County who are in charge of those relationships with the universities. And so contacting them, asking the Board of Elections, hey, who is in charge here of the relationship with university students or students in general? Also call and say, hey, I'm really interested in being a poll worker. So what's a poll worker? A poll worker is someone a registered voter or elector who volunteers on election day to work the polls. There is no better way to be involved and see democracy up close and personal than volunteering to be a poll worker. You will be paid. You're paid for that time in the training. And depending on, there's other professional incentives. Recently, we just got a permanent rule change from the Ohio Supreme Court to grant CLE credits, so continuing legal education credits for attorneys who are serving as poll workers as well. And we've worked with the Realtors Association, the social work. Actually, Ifelu was very involved in the social workers giving credit for those poll workers serving as well. So we think that that's really great. And boards of elections are obviously working with college campuses to make sure that they're getting the right information. And a lot of times there's a ton of polling locations on college campuses too. So there's a lot of coordination between the boards of elections and campuses and voters. So, you know, being a poll worker, reaching out to your board of elections, asking questions, getting more involved is what I would recommend. The role is there.
And what's the best way for college students, in particular, because you know, as a part of work we're doing, young people that we work with are becoming professionals. What do you think is the best entry point for young people to get involved in elections work if they're interested?
Yeah, being a poll worker, 100% being a poll worker. There is no better way to understand how the process works than volunteering on election day. And we need you. We need you. There is a statutory minimum of poll workers that are required to be at each polling location. So it's really, really important that we have enough bipartisan representation, because just like the Board of Elections, there has to be an even number of Republican and Democratic poll workers at each location as well. And so it's just so important that we have good people that are trained. The training is really interesting. You'll learn more about elections. Has anybody here been a poll worker? Okay, my goal next time is that I see a lot more hands than that. That is, but thank you for, did you guys, if you don't mind me picking on you a little bit, did you have a good experience? Learn a lot?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fun to see people. I got to be somewhere in my neighborhoods and got to see my neighbors.
Yeah. Giving back to the community, getting paid. And I think, you know, some employers actually give off a day of work, depending on your unique employer. I know some gave that option in 2020. So something to work with. And I know that I think some colleges and universities were letting students or excusing students from missing class if they were going to serve on election day. So completely up to you guys, but that is the best way to get involved and see the process. And you know, if you have any, we always say this from like a security and integrity perspective. If you understand how the system works, because you've been a part of it, you're able to combat some of these allegations that at least particularly other states are experiencing of, oh, this wasn't secure, or there was fraud here or there. You're able to combat that because you're like, no, I was there and that's not how it works here in Ohio, right? Because you've actually directly experienced it. So I just can't recommend being a poll worker more. It's sad I have to run the election on election day. I can't be a poll worker, but I would if I could. And I just encourage you guys all to consider that. It's actually one way that you can sign up is either calling your board of elections, going to their website, or going to our website. What we do is we send your information directly to the board of elections every week to make sure that they're contacting you to sign up to be a poll worker. So we're going to be in need of that. Secretary LaRose, actually, for the first time ever, we have a poll worker tracker, what we refer to as a poll worker tracker. So every week, as we get closer to election day, we publish the number of poll workers that have signed up in each county so that we can surge resources or work with the media to ensure that each county is getting enough. And in 2020, with the pandemic and what have you, we required that that each board of elections recruit over the statutory minimum to account for potential call-offs, right? Last minute call-offs. I'm sick. I had a direct exposure, you know, dealing with the pandemic. And so we just wanted to make sure that there was over an abundance of those that were trained and recruited to fill in the event that there were last minute call-offs.
So my next question is around institutions, as you know, we work with a lot of staff and faculty that are institutionalizing democracy on their campuses. So what do you feel like the role or the best way is for colleges as institutions to work with the local board of elections and the Secretary of State's office to help fuel their democracy efforts?
Yeah, so I think just really, whether, I know, for example, the Licking County Board of Elections has worked very closely with Denison University, for example, to send whether it's clerks or board members or their director or deputy out there to just give speeches like this, right? To make sure that folks know of deadlines, folks know of the rules, folks know how they see the person that is behind the operation, more or less. So I think that, we would certainly encourage that. I think one of the biggest things for me is getting out in front or virtually, I think I've spoke to this group the last 2 or 3 years. So again, just sharing that accurate information and making sure that they know who that they can call if there's a question. So those are really important things. And then encouraging students to participate, right? There's, I think, really interesting data around different generations' participation in the democratic process. And I think it's just, we've seen, at least some of the research has indicated that younger generations are less inclined to participate. And that's something that I think is really important that we fight against. I think sometimes folks can just get into like we've all felt it, right? The doom scroll, you're on Twitter, like the world is on fire, everything is ending kind of mentality. And then they'll self-select out of the process. They'll just, either say that they're too busy, think that their vote doesn't count, whatever reason it is. But I just am here to really encourage you to not fall into that category and take yourself out of the process, because it's as cheesy as it sounds. I mean, this is really what my entire career has been built off of is, we are a democracy for a reason. Each of you have this very unique power to vote. And not everybody in this world has that ability. And it's one that I think we take for granted way too often, but you are responsible for that participation. So please don't take yourself out of the arena and out of making a difference.
I want to make sure that people have time to ask you questions here in time. So I want to take questions from you all here in the room and online.
If you could say something, I know that some of my students are on virtually and some are here, but some of my students are high school students, so they're not eligible to vote yet. Could you just speak to some things they can do to get engaged before they're 18?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the legal requirements require you, to be 18, or at least by the time the general election, if you're attempting to vote in a primary, that you'll be 18 by the general election. And I understand the frustration about that, but that is the law. What I would say is involve yourself in nonprofits, right? Like whether you find yourself aligning with whatever interests, or even just, the Campus Vote Project. There are so many nonprofits and different organizations surrounding democracy and voting in general. So do some research online. There's so many. And also, there's if you want to even just contact your Board of Elections and say, hi, I'm a future voter, I want to understand this process more, they would be happy to meet with you. I think there are, different roles from a volunteer capacity that and even just receiving public information that they could get involved in. Absolutely. I know that some boards of elections on election day will, for tasks that aren't necessarily ballot related or anything like that, they will use folks to do some of that work that is more like clerk work, more administrative work that are not 18. And I know that that was certainly done, in 2020 in various capacities, whether it's a runner for various different things. So contact your board of elections and see how you can participate with that specific board of elections. But really, like, and even on the completely completely political side, you can volunteer for any campaign. There's no age restriction for that. And I know that many elected officials would be happy to have, 1 million volunteers to help them knock on doors, pass out, campaign literature or what have you. I think another really important thing is to do your research, right? Like, we all have the internet, we all have a computer. Start to do your research on the issues, right? So that when you show up on election day or you get your absentee ballot or you go in person early and vote, you know the candidates and the issues that you're voting on. That's then, and while, your high school students aren't able to do that, guess who they are able to help with that? Their parents.
Yes.
And we found in the mis and disinformation space, Facebook, and I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this, Facebook has become the social media platform for your parents, right? Or your grandparents. And TikTok and Instagram have sort of become the more, younger generation. And so what we've seen is that a lot of folks in upper generations outside of millennials have really spread mis and disinformation unintentionally on Facebook because they think it's coming from a legitimate news source and they're just hitting share. And then that's going all to their network who's all on it. And they think it's real because they saw it on the internet and they saw it on Facebook and their good friend from high school posted it. So it must be real, right? So that's something that we're seeing from like a security perspective. So I encourage, if you are high schoolers, make sure your parents, I'm not kidding you, are practicing good social media sharing techniques and checking that the source of information that they're sharing is verified, or it is legitimately a news source and not something that like either our foreign actors are standing up from a mis and disinformation perspective, or domestic bad actors are standing up to confuse voters. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned the caution of like registering with a third party voter registration tabling. If I were to be training a group of students on having registration table, what kind of advice can I give my students to make the process more secure and kind of have faith in the process?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Thank you for asking it. First of all, I would get the paper form that's on our website, right? So just, if you're setting up a table, I would definitely download the paper form that's on our website. And if you go to the Secretary of State's website, it's under election officials and then forms, and it's at the very bottom. It's on voteohio.gov too in a more obvious spot. But if you just Control F, voter registration form, download that, print that one, right? Because that's the only one that I can tell you has the required fields. I can't speak to a voter registration form that somebody just made up, right? So I would use that one, I would print that one, and I would say, you have to, voter, you are the one that is responsible for filling this out. Only you can fill this out, sign it, and that signature is going to be used, to verify other things in the voting process. So make sure you're signing it and have them return it to the Board of Elections, right? They can drop it off, they can mail it, whatever. So that's one aspect, but make sure that they're verifying that information because you don't want that information to be wrong, right? Because then it's wrong in the system. On the online piece, those requirement fields, that's really important, right? The only way to register to vote online in the state of Ohio is using the Secretary of State's website. That's the only way. And I just want to reiterate that we actually worked really hard in 2019 with Facebook and Instagram and all the social media companies to transition away from third-party voter registration systems. A lot of the states through our national organizations banded together and said, hey, it's not that we have anything against, third parties, it's just they're not registering these people to vote, and it's disenfranchising the voter because the voter thinks that they're being registered to vote and they're not. So now when you see the Facebook drives, what that does is it links directly to our website. So that's another thing. So just, voteohio.gov, OLVR is short term for online voter registration in the state of Ohio. So that's what I would say. And those packets are securely transferred, from our system directly down to the Board of Elections.
Going back to the paper registration forms. And you said that the individual should mail it in themselves. Would you prefer that way instead of like, if I'm tabling, collecting those forms, and at the end of my tabling session, going to the Board of Elections myself and turn them in?
Yeah, so ultimately that's really the voter's choice. I mean, I know that if I'm the one that's personally dropping it off, that it got to the Board of Elections, right? Or I'm the one that put it in the mail, that it's being delivered to the Board of Elections. I mean, ultimately it's the voter's call, but like really until you're the one that it's just the trust level of, okay, I'm giving it to this person that's sitting at this, I guess I hope it gets there, right? So, yeah.
So along the same lines, we use the national voter registration form,
What was that? Sorry.
the national voter
Yep.
registration form, and I just double checked, because I think the website changed, and it looks like it was just updated. But if we're registering voters for different states, so that's what we use on our campus, we keep the Ohio form and then the national form, we can still trust that system, and then we've just either let the student mail it or help them find the address. But that form is still
That form
an
is,
okay way to go.
I think that form is what's dictated by that National Voter Registration Act, which is
Right,
without.
it's now it's eac.gov. It's
Yeah.
the Election Assistance Commission. It used to be vote.gov, but
Right.
now it's changed.
Okay, so yeah, from the best of my knowledge, that has not, categorically
Okay.
shifted. I can't speak for other states' requirements, if that makes sense.
Like they should be accepting that form if they're mailing it. to us.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions in here?
It's not a question, but I just would add to the, when you're doing paper registrations, to review it with the person before they leave, so that you're not left with a paper that you say, oh, it's today's date, not your birthday.
That's right.
And that would be a really simple thing to.
And boards of elections gets very,
Right, exactly.
boards of
Yeah.
elections will get very angry, because they don't want to receive something that's not filled out correctly. Yeah, absolutely.
So we have time for one more question. There was a question online that's asking if you are using an absentee ballot, can you change your vote on that ballot?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the question, if you have the ballot in front of you and you got it at home, and you're marking your ballot and you change your mind before you send it, can you then change the what you decide to select before you send it? Is that the question that you're asking? I want to make sure I'm accurate in that.
So the best, in short, before I waste any of your time, the best thing to do in that situation is call your Board of Elections and say, hey, this is my situation, what should I do? So oftentimes, what I think, if I understand the hypothetical correctly, oftentimes they'll say, hey, return that, improperly marked ballot, we'll soil that ballot and we'll give you a new one. But make sure that you're just directly calling your Board of Elections and asking them what they want you to do. Thank you guys so much. It was great to be with you today. Make sure you vote. 2 important deadlines I just want to leave you with really quick is the voter registration deadline, and then when early voting starts in Ohio. So for our uniformed and overseas voters, our UACAVA voters, voting begins on September 23rd in the state of Ohio. We have what's called UACAVA Friday. Our voter registration deadline in the state of Ohio is October 11th this year. So please, please, please make sure you have that date on your calendar. Check your voter registration. You can do that online on our website type in your info with your county and your voter record will pop up and you can see, oh, is this my correct address? Is it updated accurately? Make sure you're doing that and make any updates, or if you're a new voter registration, make sure you're registered by October 11th. And then early voting begins on October 12th. So that's when you can go to the Board of Elections, at least here in Franklin County and every county. But if you are a registered voter in Franklin County, you can go and vote early in person. And then on the flip side, if you submitted your absentee ballot application, you should be receiving that from the board starting on October 12th. So those are two really important days. And if I've convinced one person here to be a poll worker this November, I have done my job. And thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here today. Enjoy the rest of your day in this beautiful weather.
All right, so we are going to be starting on our agenda. We're going to be starting. We are going to be starting our student and administrator panels. So some of our students that are presenting are on our panel are online. Some of them are in the room, and the same for administrators. So this room will be the administrator panel, which is 412. The room next door will be 414, which is going to be the student panel. Also online, I just opened up 2 breakout rooms for you to choose either the student panel or the administrator panel. I know that I usually get questions around if I want to dip in part of the administrator panel or come back. That is why it's an open choose. So yes, you can do that. You can see part of the student panel, see part of the administrative panel if you want to. But let's give people 3 minutes to get situated, make a decision, get our panelists chances to come up in the front of the room and press pin them, and let's go. Plug your, you can take mine.
Yeah.
I'm after the break. It's the same in the meeting going on.
I think once the meeting starts.
But let's talk about it.
But you can check yourself now or like they.
Oh, Paula, I haven't gotten in the panel, in either panel on that. Hey, so we're going to go. So I don't know, because you won't be able to see or hear. So let's do this. Okay, so okay, perfect.
How are you Yeah. Right. Which the structure or the
kind of, that's what I'm saying, I was talking to Mark, he said, you can be one of the policy and procedures.
Yeah.
So please join, pick a panel so that you all can be a part of it. If you're having issues, let me know in the chat that you need help getting into your panel.
My whole year was just like constantly searching. for new questions.
You need tape. There's tape in the, under the table. in the little-
Try to build a bunch of stuff. And it's like, oh, that's too much. Right? Sounds like people believe in that.
Okay, how much did they say? Oh, it should be enough. Yeah, oh, there's tape under, there's tape
I know,
under
it's
the,
just living when I was there.
in the, yeah. under the
Just
table.
do- okay, you said you had just done- No, it's still-
Oh, okay. They're digital apologies?
Okay.
Oh.
You speak.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know, I can't say
Yeah.
ever, whatever, you know.
But no one's called it that forever.
You know what, that's a new name. You know, oh, yeah. See, you know more than I know, see. Smart one.
Even though I like having.
Colette, do you need, have you all decided which room you're gonna go in?
I feel like I've seen you this week.
Sorry, no restroom.
So I want to introduce everyone. Can you all hear me from here now? The folks that are online, can you hear me from here? Perfect. Because we now have actual mic. I appreciate you all for working with us for our first hybrid summit. I know it's been some glitches, but y'all have been so gracious. So let me get started and quickly introduce everyone, and then we're going to dive into it. I think we're going to have some interesting conversation because we're, a more intimate group. So first, I want to introduce Marcita. Marcita, can you say your name? Can you say hi?
Hello, I'm Marcita Ferguson.
Hi. She is from the Brain Center at Baldwin Wallace University, and she previously was with the County Juvenile Courts Probation Department. She has a bachelor's degree of science and legal studies and MBA from Lake Erie College, and is a founding member of Black Lives Matter Lake County and the Lake County Program Liaison for the Barack Obama Foundation, My Brother's Keepers program. Marcita's passion for civic engagement and social justice has led her to run for city council, become a subject matter expert on cultural sensitivity for the Ohio Attorney General's office, and a DEI task force member and consultant for organizations dedicated to community improvement. Emily is online with us, and she is the associate director in the House for Community Leadership and Involvement Center at Denison University. She oversees and advises student-led community organizations that work to provide services on this campus and in the community. Emily also oversees Do You Vote, which is Denison's nonpartisan civic engagement initiative on campus. And Do You Vote works to engage students in voter registration, provide voter education across campus, and make sure that all eligible students have access to voting. She also leads the board of directors of the League of Women Voters of Licking County and is on the executive leadership team of Licking County NAACP. Mackenzie, who's in the room, say hi. She is the coordinator of voter education at Columbus State, and before coming to Columbus State, she was at the Franklin County Juvenile Clerk's Office. She's graduated from the Ohio State University in 2021 with a BA in World Politics and Religious Studies. At OSU, she developed her passion for higher education by working with various student and administrative organizations, including the College of Arts and Science Student Council, the Deans of Diversity Board through Assumption of Teaching Committee, and the Student Athlete for Service Office. So, I have a list of questions for you all. And let's start there, and then we'll get into a conversation as questions pop up for the folks that are online with us. So, and in the room with us. So please don't be shy to ask those kinds of questions, because I feel like there's maybe a handful of people online and a handful of people in person, so I think that can have some rich conversation. So I want to start with asking how you incorporate voices into your work on campus. And let me go to Emily first.
Let me unmute there. So we really do our best to engage all student voices on campus. I think primarily how we do that is really having a huge presence on campus with our DE Votes team, which is our nonpartisan civic engagement initiative. They are constantly out tabling, being at various different locations on campus, chatting with all of the students throughout campus, visiting classrooms, making partnerships with faculty. So they're really making sure that they get out and get into the student spaces so that they can talk with the students and see what are their needs, what are their concerns, how are they feeling about different issues, different local, state, federal legislation. And that helps us have a sense of what are the needs of the students, and then what can we do as far as voter education to help uplift their voices and give them a space.
Let's go to Marcita
How do you engage people, voices in your work on campus?
So at Baldwin Wallace, we have a unique program. We have a program called Jack is Engaged. All of the programs that come out of Brain Center are all student-led, and so we do a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring, engagement, recruiting, and things like that. So we have this Jack is Engaged program that is actually written into our budget each year, and they are able to table every single semester. They present an FYE. They have many different things on their schedule this year. One of the things that they're doing is candidates on camera. They're recruiting people from our campus to go out and actually get 1-minute videos of the local candidates so that they can do a debate watch night. They are doing alternative break trips, and so they are the front line to students. They're doing all the recruitment, and I've seen that the peer-to-peer engagement is the thing that's actually working. So we've had probably about 17 students sign up even before the school year started this year. So we know that the program is actually doing a lot of good work. So we continue to keep it in our endowment. They also get funding to do all sorts of civic engagement on campus through our Dover Fund and our Break Fund. So we are supporting them and we are letting the students lead the way. Thank you.
How about you, Mackenzie?
We work with CVP Democracy Fellows. We've been trying to introduce some work study students to our program because we are kind of a newer program. So this is the first time we've had working on this full time. So as we get more funding and as we kind of figure out what works on the landscape of our campus, especially being a community college, I hope to bring a lot more students into it. We've had some really great democracy fellows working on it and getting to kind of listen to students as we talk to them at different registration events and at different student engagement events. It's something that we definitely want to grow.
So the next question I have is really around the civic holidays. So what civic holidays have you made a part of your traditions on campus? And if so, what are they? How has that gone? Et cetera. Just found on that. And let's go with Marcia first.
So National Murders Week, we have, I think that's really our biggest week of engagement for students. Like I said, we do table every single Thursday at dinner time because we know that coming out of the dining hall, we're going to catch the most students around dinner time. But the National Week, we are actually planning a lot of different events. We have, I think, about 2 or 3 different speakers that we're having come in. But this year, we're centering everything around not only local elections, but we have a lot of students that come from about 280 miles outside of our campus. It's 80% of all of our student population. We're making sure that we're focused this year, one of our student directors, because we have 2, on absentee ballots and things of that nature. So students can actually vote in the communities in which they live. A lot of our students don't stay in the Cleveland area, so we want to make sure we're meeting their needs. And so our whole week, our National Week of Voting is going to center around some of the local elections, but it's really centered around how do you fill out absentee ballots? How do you make sure you're voting in your local election? What are you doing? What do your local electors look like? And so we have 5 different students for every single day to do some voter education around their actual communities, which we think is going to stimulate more students to get involved and actually start to present on different communities throughout that 280 mile radius, so that everybody's really engaged on what's going on in their community and they actually do vote.
My next question, so Emily, can you also respond to that question?
Yes. So we try to have events for every civic holiday that we can, for National Voter Registration Day. Again, really just working on getting several people registered to vote, whether that's having an event where, everyone gets together, maybe they do some civic education trivia, and get everybody registered to vote. We also participate in early voting day, so partnering with national organizations for early voting day. And we plan to do rides to the polls, given that if people are voting early, they're probably not voting at the standard polling location so close to campus. Also definitely utilizing a lot of on-campus education events, but also for National Voter Education Week, you know, making sure that we're utilizing social media, since many students engage with that and communicate in that way. So utilizing social media for all civic holidays. And then of course, voting day, right? That's a big one. So we definitely make sure we have several events for each civic holiday, just to make sure we're increasing that voter registration, but also making sure that we get out the vote as well.
So is there anything, what's an example of something that you thought would be effective on your campus in improving student political engagement, but wasn't? And how did that turn out? Let's go to Nancy first.
Something that was effective, that was something we thought would be effective, that wasn't. Something I think we thought would be effective and wasn't was, so I don't think that it's not been effective, but it's definitely been more of a challenge than I think we've expected. We set up a voter registration kiosk, and we definitely thought that that would be like a place where students could go to register kind of on their own. And we've just had some challenges with like students knowing that it's there. We've had challenges with IT, keeping the screen up so that students know what it is, because it is kind of just, you know, walk into this student area and there's a table with a monitor on it. And so like we had to figure out how to market that best, to get like numbers to come through it and how to get students to actually like visit it. So that's been kind of a challenge for us, is figuring out how to get people to utilize that, because I think for a long time it was there, but nobody really knew what it was or how to use it, and we didn't really know how to like increase engagement with that form, especially because on our campus we don't have like a civic engagement office really. So that was kind of like our physical presence. So how do we make our physical presence stronger? That was something that we hope to be effective, that we definitely have been having challenges getting where like.
Why don't we go to Emily next on the Mercy? Try to mix it up. So,
Sorry, did you say me next? Okay. Trying to think of something we thought would be effective and wasn't. I think there are just various things at Denison. There are a lot of events and a lot of, I'm sure that's the case everywhere, where people have to pick and choose between, you know, 10 different things happening. But I think something that I had hoped or thought might be effective as far as voter education participation would be debate watch parties, right? We can't get everybody to the physical debates, so having more events with watch parties are great ways for students to learn about the candidates, but the attendance has not always been super high. So I think that was a hope, and I think we'll figure out how to make that more effective. But attendance is a struggle. Yeah. And then are we talking about something that we thought something that was effective as well?
yeah, I want to go to Marcina first, and then we're
Okay,
gonna
great.
ask that question.
So I'll have to piggyback off Mackenzie, because our civic corner is the same way. So we have it in the basement of our actual union, which is by our dining hall. Our dining hall is upstairs. And we check it roughly every 2 weeks, and the engagement in our civic corner does not do well. I mean, we probably maybe get 2 or 3 different voter registration cards a semester. So we're trying to figure out how do we do a better job of marketing that. one of the things that we were hoping is to do like a scavenger hunt with the prize, like how, just not just with the Civic Corner, but with also other different departments on campus who have issues in regards to something that they're trying to get the students engaged with. So if we can get them to go to these different areas on campus, maybe we can get them to more utilize our Civic Corner. But yeah, we're having such an issue with people utilizing our Civic Corner as well.
And so the opposite of that question is what Emily was alluding to. What is something that you didn't think would be effective, but ended up working really well on your campus? And Emily go first. It's not like she was queued up to go.
Well, we weren't sure if we would be able to engage different departments and different faculty with kind of having a presence in the classrooms, and that's something that the team of students has been working on. But they've really been able to develop partnerships and communicate with various people across campus and build relationships. And they've been able to get into classes this semester. And again, just have that presence with students and be able to let them know this is how you get this information. This is who you reach out to. Another really important piece that has helped a lot is partnering with residential communities and housing. So that they can help get out information about, hi, you have a new dorm. Every year, you have a new address. You need to register to vote again. So making sure that residential communities housing is communicating that information with students. And also students are communicating that with the overall campus. Just building those relationships. You're not sure if you're going to be able to get into classrooms or do things like that, but that's been really successful for our team to help students have the information that they need.
What about you, Marcia?
So being a part of the OAC, we have to create the 2-year action plans. And one of the things that I didn't think was going to be pretty impactful was our coalition of democratic engagement, because we know that it's really hard to get faculty, staff, and students all in a committee, all doing the work all together at one time. And so I was like, oh, this is just going to be like one of those things that I just have to do a couple times a semester, and it's not going to bear any fruit. But actually, our coalition is super great. Like, they've been holding us accountable for the things in our action plan. They've been giving us actual recommendations, like our alternative break trip that's going to Columbus. They're helping us set up, our tours with people that they know. And this is faculty and staff members that we didn't expect to actually give as much to our committee as we thought. And from that, we've actually started this thing that we're going to start in the spring called it's a group that comes into your campus called Dinner and a Fight, and then they exit off, and it's called Dialogue, and it's to help students engage in the democratic process. And so that was from one of our actual faculty members that's on the committee that took me to the first one that we're going to implement on our campus. We're going to try to do that 2 times a semester to get students talking about these so-called, very controversial topics, but how do we actually have conversations, be okay that we don't agree, and then move forward, and what is the action plan from that? And so I could say our coalition of democratic engagement has been the thing that's putting us over the top, I think, for this next year, and how we engage students in civic responsibility.
And Mackenzie?
I think one event that I personally was really excited about, but I didn't know how effective it was going to be for voter education and registration, was we had 4 Paws for Ability from the Ohio State chapter come in with some of their service dogs in training. And we partnered with our accessibility team to kind of bring awareness to what service dogs are and to bring awareness to the disability and accessibility services that we have on campus and their team. And then we also have like voter registration and some of our info as well. And I thought like, oh, everybody's just gonna pay attention to the dogs and leave. But when people would come up to the dogs and like pet them and hang out with them, if they would start talking to us and we were able to have really good conversations because everybody was so excited about the dogs and then they were like, wait, what is this here for? And so we were able to, tell them about the accessibility services, tell them about registering to vote, give them our information and stuff like that. And it was just like a really good eye-catching moment for students when they're walking past. And it was just really fun for us and volunteers as well. And everybody it was a really gorgeous day out. So everybody just hung out outside with the dogs and talked about voting and talked about different services on campus. So it was definitely better than expected.
Thank you. So I want to be mindful of our time, and I know we'll be heading into our next session soon. And we have some other questions, but I want to know if any of you all had questions for either Emily, who's online, or Mackenzie, or Marcia, or something that you just want to talk about that's come up as you have heard the chat.
I would love to, I like that idea of the dinner and the fight. Sometimes I worry a little bit, we're so hyper aware of being politically neutral that it avoids us from going deep with anything. And I feel like that is both the eye-catching part of some of this, but also students need to wrestle with how they feel about certain things. And it's okay to maybe disagree from the person next to them. And so how do we infuse conversations about actual issues affecting people and communities and stuff into some of this larger work, I guess?
So I would say that platform is great. I believe it's something that was taken from Arizona State, and there's a man that's going around. He's actually in Cleveland, but I think it's all of Northeastern Ohio. So the one that I attended was in South Euclid. And the basic premise of it is to get people to talk about how they feel and what they believe, and then closing it out with this understanding that it's okay for us to disagree. We still have to do action in our community. And what does that civic responsibility look like? How many people can we touch and actually do good work for it? And it's not always going to be this item is going to be good for you, but it may be good for the mass people, right? How we talked about masks. Maybe the mask isn't protecting you as much as you say, but you're protecting other people. That was the whole premise of everybody putting the mask on right in the beginning. And so this actual event is actually just like that. It's just really bringing home to students. And it was really a lot of community members that attended, but you walk in, you get a prompt, you have to sit by someone who does not know you. And then you talk about like, why do you like Christmas lights, right? And it's like this really easy conversation while you're having dinner. And then what you look over and there's an audience and there's 5 chairs. And then there's neutral, agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And then you go over there, you get the premise of what the actual, what's going to be about, the rules. And then they give you the topic. And then 5 people have to actually go up, sit in those chairs, and they have a 20-minute discussion. Then they engage the crowd for 20 minutes, and then they have like 10 minutes where they're doing their closing and things like that. But then they wrap up to talk about the democratic process is that we are all allowed to have our opinion, but how do we work together when we do have those differing opinions? And we really want to be able to take our student leaders and get them to amplify that for the community, let them be the model, right? Who's the supposer modeling the way for the rest of the world because we've become so polarized. How do we empower our students to actually take that and show the world what it should look like? And we're going to use it in classes because we're going to video it.
Are there any other questions? So one of the things that came up to me for me that I heard from Marcia is I think one of the things that we hope to always have is kind of an evergreen thing for students to engage with so that it's on their time. And so what are some ways that it can either be more visible or that we can respond to students, because I know that students ask for things like that sometimes, but also those same students that requested are not engaging with, that stationary thing sometimes. So that's just something that came up for me when we were talking about, something that wasn't necessarily going as planned, as intended.
Something that I've been talking about with some of my colleagues is like, where do our students go? Who do they trust? And like, can we put voter education in the things that we already do? So like, can our advisors be trained on registering students to vote, or at least have some like literature at their desks or in their office, so that when students go there and they get to know somebody and they talk with them a lot, they can also talk about this. And it's, they just know that if they go to an office, they can ask somebody there about it, even if they don't know like specifically that I exist or that I'm around or that the voter registration kiosk is there. Like if they work in, student services or like the Veterans Affairs, like how do we get everybody on board with it and like include our work in all these different things that we kind of already do and like that we can engage the students that we work with every day in it instead of me trying to like reach a ton of people all by myself. Like a ton of people trying to reach the students that they do touch and that they do have relationships with.
And I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll be going into a 5-minute break in the next session. Does anyone have another question, either in person or online? Then let's reconvene at 2 for our next session. Thank you so much, all.
Yes, so I went to it first to make sure it was gonna be appropriate.
A lot. To me, when I think of like underground.
And girls with like.
voice,
At least, and even if they, even if it's just to get first, I know that they want to, like usually, no, they take trips, we're going out, going out, this, so they have, the name of the trip is, something like. Remembering, so you guys are actually running like.
He's a bad dog.
All of our co-curricular.
I am hopeful that we had a good short break. But we're gonna move right along with our agenda. In the, online, are we still good to go? Can you all hear? Can you all see now? I wanna make sure that we are good before we start. So our next session is going to be hosted by Armand Cook. Armand is a recent graduate from the University of Mount Union. He's an Akron, Ohio native, and he is currently the deputy state coordinator for Campus Hill Project. Having him work with us through this election cycle. And so he is going to take it away and talk about civic holidays.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and everybody virtually too. So I know you've got a lot of information coming at you today, so I'm gonna help that out by throwing some more information your way. So again, my name is Armand Cook. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Deputy State Coordinator in Ohio. And today I want us to have a conversation about how we can go about celebrating our civic holidays. So just to give you all a roadmap, I'm going to give you just brief background context for what civic holidays are, why they're important. Then I want to specify which civic holidays we're going to be talking about because there's a lot out there. But there are some specific to work in this space that we can really utilize and you can utilize in your campus communities. And then I'm going to get you moving around a little bit with a group activity where you're going to be mixing up and working together. So just so we can just prepare for that. So civic holidays are nonpartisan days of action, and they are designed to basically benefit our democracy. They are days where people come together for a common goal, whether that goal be to register voters or to get people to vote early, whatever the goal may be, the goal is to help our democracy and to come together. And that's really why they are so important, because people come from different communities, kind of like this room. We're all from a lot of different places. We're from the same place, but we come from a lot of different places, different backgrounds, different organizations, and it's a great way for people to come together and to just take a break from everything else and to work for the benefit of our democracy. So the civic holidays that I want us to really focus on today are these: Poll Worker Recruitment Day, which has just recently passed, National Voter Registration Day, Voter Education Week, Vote Early Day, and Election Hero Day. Now, I think the titles are pretty indicative of what these civic holidays are. I won't go into detail about each one, but these are the ones that we're going to focus on our group activity. So I just want to give you all a heads up. So start thinking about these civic holidays. So now I have a question for you all, and I would like one or two volunteers to answer this. And if those of us joining us virtually, if you want to answer this question, just go ahead and throw your answer in the chat. How do you celebrate civic holidays on your campus? It can be any civic holiday. It can be something that you've done in the past, something that you're planning to do. But if I could have one or two volunteers share how you have celebrated civic holidays on your campus, that would be great. Not all at one time.
Next week, we're partnering with our library to celebrate Constitution Day.
Okay.
So we'll have like constitutions and some trivia and different voter registration.
Yes.
We're doing that too, and we also host tabling events for National Voter Registration Day.
Thank you for sharing. So do we have any in the chat? Okay. So that brings us to our exercise that we're going to do today. And so what we're gonna do is split into 4 different groups. What's the next slide? Okay. So 4 groups would be group with National Voter Registration Day, Voter Education Week, Election Hero Day, and Vote Early Day. So what I want us all to do, for those in person, we're going to count off 1 through 4, and the group that you're in will coincide with that number. And for those joining us virtually, you will be placed into a breakout room, and whichever number that breakout room is, that is your civic holiday. So just before we break into our groups though, just a few more guidelines. So you'll have 5 minutes to work with your group. You all have sticky notes and note cards on your tables. And those joining us virtually, you can just use your chat to write things down in your breakout room. But you're going to take 5 minutes on a $200 budget to come up with a program or an event for your civic holiday that you were assigned. So I think the easiest way for us to do this is to just go table by table and count off. Is there anybody who, not to put you on the spot, but is there anybody who would prefer not to participate and just to observe? You don't have to, you can watch. Okay, so I don't see anybody in court suing me. I didn't make you do this. Okay, so we start over here. 1, 3, 4.
1,
Yep.
2,
3,
4, 2, 4, 2,
4, 1. Okay, so if I could have 1s here, 2s here, 3s here, and 4s over here. Just take a few minutes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. I'm gonna get you my card before I go. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say before we get started, if you won't have time for everybody to go, but just in case, prepare a spokesperson to present your plan. So I don't think we'll have time for everybody, but I'll try to get through each civic holiday. So just have a spokesperson ready.
I don't know where to start. Gotta get some. So we're at last week. Education week. A whole week, we need more money. That's the first.
We will recognize his importance in his work.
Oh.
You're number 1.
Number 1 is National Voter Registration Day. Number 2 is Voter Education Week. 3 is.
No, I meant like.
Budget is negotiable.
And then we get a later. Okay. All right. You came with ideas.
Showed up to vote, 80 years old, this is their first time. You know, like that's the stories I was thinking of. But it would be cool to highlight more.
Number 2.
It humanizes.
How much is the boy? Thank you.
Especially nowadays.
That sounds like a lot.
I did, I was going for one time.
Yeah.
For the week.
For the week. For kids.
Nobody knows anything. Feel like there's not a lot of stuff that's too simple or get bringing bills and stuff. So it's just like you're dealing with people that are really stressed, like don't have time anyway. So like it's a very heavy rolling balance. But it feels fun. There was something that, and I did that when I was in high school, and we had to have like a certain amount of hours of like service to graduate, because this was the
Such like politics. Third party, yeah. Community service.
So we gotta change our goals.
So that would be like.
Of your.
Check us out.
We have a whole week.
To be really. Because a lot of.
I don't know.
This is the day after.
Do you have like for all the stuff?
So we get the.
This will be our government. If we don't vote, and then. So when.
Yeah. Because there's a bar around information. So we can bring some around. And the place where I did it. Posted is already yeah, I think she meant like postage stamps, like to the stamps. So it's like, you can really.
I think at BW, we're a little bit different. So let me just talk about.
So that's a good point.
Our-
Before, like, if it's on the day.
We're very.
Yes? Okay, so I think the easiest way to do this is, we're just gonna go through all the civic holidays. So start with group one. We'll go through, and then for those who are joining virtually, we'll save some time for a virtual group to present as well. So group one, if you'd like to get us started, could you please take a minute or so, and a minute or less, and tell us your plan? And also, I'm sorry, also, when you do speak, if you could just tell us your name, your pronouns, and where you're from.
I'm Hannah Surgeon, she's her from Otterline. We had National Voter Registration Day, and we talked about using part of our budget by tablecloth because that's nice and it's pretty easy to reuse, but then also having a prize vote, but offering that as an incentive for everyone, even if they aren't registering to vote at your table, just having prices as an option and putting our table in a high traffic area. So students can stop and say hi on their way to class. There's a lot of the student body seeing where you're tabling.
Sounds good. Group one.
I pulled them up on Amazon.
I was just gonna Google
They're really fantastic. Oh, yeah. I think they're a big hit with college students for some reason. I don't know why.
Everybody got those? Could you throw the link in that in the chat? Thank you. Okay, group two. Okay, I will say group two had a bigger challenge. They had National Voter Education Week with $200, and that is a challenge. So we'll be graceful. But if you are ready,
All right, so how we're gonna use the budget is this. Step number one, ask for more money. Step number two, catering. You can't argue with that. You're eating food right now. Come on. People follow their stomachs first. So like, get people excited for National Voter Education Week. Give them free food, and then they'll start listening. We sectioned off $50, which doesn't sound enough for a week, but we gotta work what we have. Next, stamp books. Give them stamp books so that it's a bit of a reminder, and also you get free stuff out of it. That's some cool swag. All right. Next step, also provide candy with reminders or like reminders to educate yourself on voting. Like chewing gum with some wrappers reminding you to educate yourself while voting and stuff like that. Because people like candy, right? And I don't know about you, but I remember Crunch Bars much more than whatever the heck the current president is. All right. And then number 4. I cannot count. Okay, but I'm going to say number 4. Step number 4, we're going to have a partnering treasure hunt to get people a bit more excited and also work with other organizations to get more money, because this is a week, you get days. This is unfair. Okay. So $20 for the treasure hunt, $30 for the candy with reminders and to educate yourself about voting, $50 for catering, and then $100 for free stamp books. That's how we're going to work it.
cool. Oh, yeah. Sounds good.
All right, I'm Garrick Sembrano. I'm from Columbus, and I go to Columbus State Community College.
Thank you.
Anyone that was participating online want to share what you all came up with?
Okay, I will say with $200, you can buy 200 McChickens from McDonald's and. Okay.
I don't think my chickens are $1.
Inflation, I forgot. So Election Hero Day, Group 3.
I'm Aiden Trummer from Mount Union. We had Election Hero Day, and our plan with $200 was to buy kind of care packages for all our poll workers in our district. So we would do like little hand sanitizer bottles, little water bottles, like trail mix packages, just stuff to keep you going throughout the day.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next, 4 with Vote Early Day.
So I'm Ben, and I ended up drawing the short straw. I'm from Akron, but I go to school at Mount Union. And our topic was Vote Early Day. So with $200, we divided up into quarters. On the actual day, we're gonna we're gonna offer rides to and from the polls so that transportation is no longer an excuse. And we allocated $50 towards that. For the week leading up to that day, we allocated another $50 for advertisements, like posters and whatnot, tabling. And at the van pickup location, we spent $50 on food. And then the last $50 we spent was on more food. So that was what we did for vote early day.
Well, thank you, everybody, for sharing. Lots of good ideas. Really quickly, though, I won't read through all of these because I'm sure most of us can see what's on the screen. But I will say, along with your civic holidays, these are just some other ideas that you can take to your campus, if not already. And these just give you different ways to go about engaging students. I think we all know working with college-age students in terms of getting them excited about voting and democracy is not always the easiest thing in terms of participation. So sometimes you have to mix up the programming a little bit, change up what you do, and whatever works for your campus. Like for me, I went to Mount Union where it's a smaller school, so me taking advantage of my personal relationships. But if you go to a huge school where that's not as easy, maybe you need to leverage social media, do things like that. So these are just a few event programs that you could look into doing for your campuses. And if anybody want to take a picture of those, just let me know. I can go back. And here are some resources if you want more information on civic holidays. These are the ones that I've used are really great resources. We have civicholidays.org, Constitution Center /learn /civic calendar, and then National Today /civic holidays. So if you go to these websites, they have a lot more civic holidays than the ones we talked about today. And they also have background, context, and information for why these civic holidays are important. And then if anyone has any questions, I would do my very best to answer.
We had a question that came out, I thought it was good. If we're giving out gifts like to poll workers, because I was just National Hero Day, is that a violation of any laws?
I have to call my lawyer. I will be honest, the only one thing that I'm sure is that when it comes to students, you have to be careful about gifting in return for things. When it comes to poll workers after the election, I'm not 100% sure I don't know that violates anything. I don't think so, but I can't say 100% it doesn't. So I would definitely say.
What I can do is talk to our council.
I'm just curious, yeah.
I have a question for everybody. I would love more examples of cross programming. Like if there's another student group that's doing an event, have you come in and do voter registration? Or if you've ever done, like Mackenzie was telling us about how she brought in Pause for Ability, which is, I don't know how to explain their organization, but they bring in dogs and they train dogs for different areas and like cross programming that with voter reg. I would love more examples of that.
One of the groups on our campus that does the largest events, is our environmental groups. They do like whole campus events that oftentimes we can sign up for a table at. So any event like that's like several hours or a whole day, it's campus wide, we just sign up to have a table at automatically.
We do a lot with ours called Raider Programming Board, so they do all of our on-campus programming. So it's more entertainment based, but they've been great about letting us show up certain weeks or whenever we want. And they have events twice a week. So our coffee house is on Friday nights or other programming on Wednesdays. We just show up with registration forms. We also partnered with them, like during Women's History Month, that our Campus Democracy Fellows did a Kahoot and partnered with them for, I think it ended up being more like Jeopardy themed, but it was all about voting and then like women in politics and the history aspect were all of the questions. So we've had a lot of success there, but we're a smaller campus, so it's really easy to partner with other offices.
I'm a part of our environmental group, and we did, I don't know how many years we did it, but 2 years ago, we did like a Lead Candidates kind of event. And you have to say partial, obviously, but it's kind of like you give, what each campaign is basically based on and let them read that for themselves. But we also have, information like get registered here, let's talk about this, that kind of thing. So we were able to partner with them in a similar way with their environment.
I also think that piggybacking on the fact that student elections, I know that
I don't think Columbus State has a student body president, but a lot of other campuses do. So whenever, people are voting for their own student elections, having the opportunity to also register to vote in like real life, I think is like a good like synergy. And in the campus I went to college, and everyone was very involved in the elections. So, because it's just like a public. But yeah, I think that's probably a really good campus centric thing.
For voter registration forms and not events, Ottermine has like a gen ed program, so I know it might be a little different, but any class that's like standard for a large percent of students, like our freshman seminar and senior seminars, they oftentimes have like peer mentors or students in those classes, so we'll reach out to that group of people and give forms to them and they distribute to the classes.
Good ideas. Anything else? Any more questions from anybody? Well, thank you all for sharing. I hope you took some away from this. I definitely got some ideas. So that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for participating in that. Our next session is gonna ask Caleb Griffin to do a Senate Bill 320 introduction for us, so that we can stay educated on.
All right. You got me again. I promise to keep it short. No, I don't need to put that. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about early on in my first presentation was voter ID. And what's your name? Martha? Yeah. Martha mentioned her daughter who had an outdated voter ID. Oh, our senator is here. I'm gonna yield the floor because Senator Sherrod Brown, everybody.
So, if you don't know. That's the cool thing about. Yeah. I was gonna tell you, you need to be right here, but,
I can stand anywhere.
you can stand-ish here.
Oh, I can. I can like go back over towards now, I gotta like.
So if you don't know who he is, I'm gonna be really disappointing you. This is our amazing Senator Sherrod Brown, who offered to come and connect with us today when he found out that we were having a summit. And I'm gonna yield the floor to him so he can give us some words.
I met Chuck was walking with you, but there you.
Yeah.
And also, Cole is here, she was Cole. That's you, oh, okay. Cool. And you're with the national group, but you're smart enough to live in Ohio. All right, good to see you all. I'm gonna start off with a story. Well, first of all, what Alexa said is exactly what happened to my staff. Found out this was going on. You can sit if you want. You don't really, you really don't look comfortable. You sit like that in class. That really looks like comfortable. Anyway, okay, I want to tell you, anyway. But first, we found out about it and I wanted to be here because this group of people and those watching that little cool thing are going to save this state and save this country. We really need you. So I know this is nonpartisan, but I'm thinking you probably care about choice and care about women's rights and care about civil rights and care about getting this country going in the right direction and having fair, honest elections and presidents when they lose, actually acknowledging they lose and moving on. So I assume, am I right that most of you would agree with that? I like it, you stand behind me like it's not. So if I say stupid things, does she turn her head this way? So I want to tell you a story. So does some of you know who my wife is?
Yes.
Okay, most of you do. Okay, so you know the name of my dog?
No.
See lots of pictures.
Okay, but you know, okay, Franklin County, Franklin Roosevelt, and Walter is named after a Labor Leader, Walter Roosevelt. They're both rescue dogs that my wife post more about the dogs than about me, and that's okay too. But so my wife is pretty funny, as you know, but she's a writer, for those of you who don't know her. And she and I were at an event one day, and it was a room about this size, but there were no tables and chairs. It's a true story. And everybody was kind of squeezed together. There were 2 or 3 of us up front, and I was introduced, started talking. And this guy, true story, this guy my wife had never seen before, turns to my wife and said, "God, I hate that guy's voice." And she said, "Yeah." And he said, "When that guy speaks, it's like fingernails on a blackboard." And Connie said, "Really? I like his voice." He said, "You like that guy's voice?" And she said, "Yeah, you know what? I really like it." And she goes like this and leans forward, and he leans forward. So I really like it when he wakes me up in the middle of the night, says, "I love you, baby." Not the funniest joke ever heard, but anyway, it's a true story. But I started off by saying that you really can save this state and save this country. This state has gotten more and more corrupt in its government. You can think of the $60 million payoff. You can think of the abuse of power where they tried to redistrict in the Supreme Court, even the bipartisan vote of the Supreme Court 3 or 4 times, throughout the districts, and they kept doing it and didn't care and just ignored the will of the voters twice, ignored the court. You can see what's happened. Our population has stagnated as a state. Our economy, when the year that I was born, we were in the top, I believe, 10 in income in the country of the 50 states, and now we're in the bottom half. Just one thing after another, because we've had leaders that are more interested in feeding corporate interests than they are in human rights. And when I think about human rights, the one thing that I always think of is I just start thinking about when Dr. King was killed and what he was doing when he was killed. He showed up in Memphis in February, if he was killed in April, I think, right? Showed me April 4th, of course. February 1968, he showed up in Memphis because the sanitation workers in a deeply segregated South, the sanitation workers were pretty much all Black. It was a very segregated city. The mayor was a racist. And the mayor, the Black sanitation workers were not allowed. They had no place to take breaks on hot summer day or hot any days in Memphis. And so they over time, what they would do is they would rest in their garbage truck because there was no places in these generally all white neighborhoods they could rest. So 2 sanitation workers were in the back of the truck resting, taking a 10-minute break during their afternoon, and the garbage truck malfunctioned and crushed 2 workers and killed them. So King showed up first for the workers. And then when he came back, when he was assassinated in April, it was always the intersection of worker rights and human rights, working against civil rights more than human rights, worker rights and civil rights. And that's who King was, understanding always worker rights. It was Dr. King. I don't know what you know about me, but one of the things I talk about a lot and that I really try to live as much as I can in my job is the dignity of work. That if you put in that one job should be enough. If you put in the hours and do the work and focus on your work, you should make enough. That you don't need a second job, you should make enough to feed your family. And King popularized the term dignity of work. And not many politicians over the years have used it, but it started, that term actually came from, I'm Lutheran, not Catholic, but from a Pope 150 years ago, the guy named Pope Leo XIII. And he was the first international figure really to focus on workers and workers having rights and workers not being exploited. And so coming out of that, and that's sort of how I see government and politics and our mission as progressives. And I don't assume Democrats are all progressives, but you look smart and you're young. And how could you be anything else but smart and progressive and care about justice? So, but looking through this prism always of worker rights and human rights. And when it's human rights, it's marriage equality, it's women's rights to control their own bodies and their destiny. It's low income people having a decent opportunity. It's people of color and civil rights. And that's the reason I wanted to come today was to share that, because I know your generation, I think better than any generation of my lifetime, understands the importance of human rights and worker rights and gay rights and civil rights, and under that whole rubric of human rights. And so your work on campuses is so important. I know you represent from Columbus State. I think there's Cleveland State here, there's Baldwin Wallace, there's, I think I saw Denison. I shouldn't start naming them because I don't remember how many I saw, but I know there are a lot of schools. So I just add how important it is. I just wanted to encourage you how important it is to make sure that you get everybody registered and everybody to vote on campuses. I understand you don't have to ask their party, you don't have to ask their political affiliation, you don't have to ask, if they have a Donald Trump shirt, I guess you gotta register them too. But you don't allow that many of them on your campuses. I understand. But anyway, so whatever it takes, just it's so important that you register people and you engage. So one thing I do in campaigns that I encourage others to do, and I kind of always close campaign speeches by asking people to go out and get 5 people. And you're looking much broader than this and much bigger than this. But as election day gets nearer, if you evolve and if you kind of go into that, asking people, everybody to get 5 people, 5 people who might not vote or might not be interested enough to vote unless you talk to them, and sort of adopt 5 people and make sure they get registered, help them do that. A lot of people don't know how. Give them the confidence to be ready to vote and what these candidates are all about, and go with it that way. So before I'll take questions, but I'd like you to just go around the room and tell me your name and what school you're at and what you're studying. So I'll start with you.
I'm Ben Dodds and I go to science.
Okay, you did exactly what I asked, but one more thing. What town you grew up in?
Akron.
So you're not far from and you are here, but not you. You next.
I'm Megan Cascula. I go to Mount Union. I'm an environmental science major, but I'm from Pittsburgh.
You know that guy?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of Pittsburgh people go to Mount Union.
Yeah, it's not far.
Yeah, it's close to the lines.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm Sam Square. I'm actually a natural professor here from the state. I teach major in poli-sci actually. I went here one time.
I'm Martha Crone. I'm a professor of political science here. I grew up in York, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when I was in Congress, my director grew up in York. Her name was CHAMES. It's not a big town. They had a really awful mayor for a while. It was kind of a racist, maybe not kind of.
Still be that way.
Yeah.
I'm Derek Sobrano. I'm from Columbus. Sometimes it was Worthington. I'm not entirely sure where I'm from. And I'm majoring in electromechanical engineering.
You're in school here?
Yeah, I'm in school here, Columbus State Technology.
Jonathan Krieger, I'm a faculty member teaching political science here at Columbus State. I'm from Newark.
We just came over from Lincoln County to Biden's in town, but did the kickoff of this huge, unbelievably big project. So you're from Newark.
I'm Armando Cook. Just actually recently graduated from Mount Union, and now I work as a network sector coordinator with the campus.
Where'd you grow up?
Akron.
My name's Liz Reynolds. I'm from Mount Union. I'm studying international affairs and I'm from Harvard.
Magic.
I'm Aiden Trummer. I go to Mount Union. I'm from Alliance and I study political science.
Live at home or in campus?
Campus.
First time I saw LeBron James play was in high school at Barberton High School. Really? Yeah, he was president. He was in the tournament. It was like an adult with 9 children on the field. It wasn't really a fair match. He only started trying in the 3rd quarter. And he just kind of played it easy and then turned it on. Yeah. I hope it's not, no offense to Mount Union, but got some new schools over here, right?
I'm also from Mount Union. So I'm the director of our Regular Center for Public Service. So I brought, I think, all the students that are here with us today. And I went to Mount Union, but originally from Fresno, Ohio.
Fresno, Ohio.
Yeah. Very small town.
I know. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I've been there.
I'm not from your state. I'm Chuck Black. I work for Campus Vote Project, and I'm here from Philly. Senator Casey is my senator.
You worked for Casey for a while.
I did.
Yeah, I love Casey.
Thank you.
It's a good name. Did you grow up in Philly?
Very central, pensive. But I just moved to Philly in 2020. Not that anything was happening, you know.
So I noticed driving back and forth for a year, I didn't get on a plane. So Fred and I drove from Washington back to Cleveland and Washington. in Central Pennsylvania, there were more Trump signs than like any place I'd ever been.
My job's nonpartisan, so I can't respond to that.
I'm Sophia Lombardo. I am the civic engagement specialist here at Columbus State.
High school, where'd you go?
I actually went to the Art and Conservatory Academy, but I grew up in Brandon Heights.
Maybe high school. Our next time.
Kayla
Grew up
Griffin.
here? Grew up here?
Yes. Kayla Griffin. I grew up in Youngstown, live in Cleveland, and I'm the state director for All Voting is Local.
Oh, you're state director. Grew up in Youngstown, lived in Cleveland. Where'd you grow up? Where in Youngstown did you go to high school?
Cheney,
Janie, Youngstown, Janie. Where you live in Cleveland?
Lakewood.
What's that?
Sit on your commission.
Oh, okay, you were okay, okay. I needed some help. Everybody had masks on.
Marcia Ferguson. I am the assistant director of community engagement at Alden Wallace. I am from Lake County. I run your MBK
Okay.
in Lake County, and I now live in Cleveland.
We do something called My Brother's Keeper that you mentioned 10 years ago, more or less. President Obama asked me to start My Brother's Keeper initiatives in Ohio. And he asked some others. Nobody's, frankly, Ohio has more than California does, but there are about 12 chapters there. We find obviously local people. It's a program where we have sort of a mentoring program of young African Americans. And in North Dakota, it's Native Americans. In Texas, it's more Latinos, but most of the Black kids in this. It's all boys. And they've really reached in the communities well. We have about 12 chapters now. And President Obama actually had talked to him in 2 years. He called me this week because we did one in Cincinnati. He heard about it. He just said something about it. So do a really big one in Lake County. Maybe he'll call me. Cool. All right, last table.
I'm Hannah Surgeon. I go to Otterbein, majors in environmental science, political science, I'm from
Major, minor, and that many things. Kind of loses the edge. Yeah.
My name is Will Howell. I'm from a very small town just north in Ohio, and I study right here at Columbus State. I am major in economics.
So I've heard of Fresno, so why don't you tell me your town?
It's called Parkville.
I know. It's bigger than Fresno. Yeah. Fresno aspires to be as big as Hartford.
I'm Jared Richard. I go to Mount Union. I study criminal justice and sociology. Smithville.
Where?
Smithville.
Smithville. Oh, Orville.
Yeah.
Oh, Wayne County. My dad used to take us to cow sales and kids and all. You know, there are a lot of Amish in Smithville. There aren't kids.
Not in Smithville, no,
Do you have a big dairy there?
Orville.
Oh, Smithville, it's in Orville. That's right. Yeah.
Smith there is in Orville, but yeah, for names.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry to confuse myself. Yeah.
My name is Kate. I go to the University of Nottingham. I study national security and intelligence analysis, and I major in arms.
Where?
Iowa State.
Iowa City.
You need to brag.
That's a great town, people say. Big university, right? University kind of is the whole city. Not like here, I mean, a big school like here, but small town, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm Jan Kubacek, and I'm majoring in psychology and associative science here at Columbus State.
And you grew up where?
On the other side of the world, in Czech Republic.
Where?
Czech Republic. North of Prague, 1 hour.
In Prague. How do you say it?
Prague.
No, but in Czech.
Oh,
you
in
say Prague.
Prague.
Prague, yeah, that's right.
You
You
were
don't
close.
understand my
I-
Czech. I kept trying to say in Czech and you kept correcting me in English. Great. My God, I've been waiting 5 years for this and you embarrassed me. Jeez. My God. Chesky.
That was really good.
Praha Chesky. That's all I know, man. That's my vocabulary. Oh, you didn't tell me your situation.
Oh, so I am from Cleveland, currently living in Detroit, and I'm the Ohio State coordinator for campus. I have the joy of working with most of these members.
Did you go to high school?
I went to London.
What?
London.
Are you, any questions or what do you want to do?
Well, you had everyone introduce themselves. And we have a whole group of people that are actually online, and I feel really bad. 'cause they're getting-
I'm sorry, I don't.
So, does anyone want to introduce themselves? You would come up on the screen, so. the
They
senator-
didn't put their pictures on. They put their pictures on, they can't introduce themselves. They cared enough to put their pictures on.
I assume they would turn their camera on.
Yeah, in fact, nobody's got their camera. Two people have their photo on. There, finally, Andrew put his camera on. He's from Marietta. Marietta.
Colette.
Hello, Senator.
Colette has a whole- has
So the
has a
news is I
whole
didn't
group
put
of
them to
students.
sleep. I put them to sleep, at least these four.
That's just so sweet, so.
Okay.
Lindsay put her.
You want to talk to us, any of you? Do anybody have any questions about any of this? Would you? I'll let you get back to training unless somebody else.
Your turn, the camera's for you.
Good to see you all.
Do any of you have any questions for the senator or want to introduce yourself? Because we all got like to have a spotlight on us.
Hi, Senator Brown. My name is Lindsay Payton. I am an equine pre-vet major with a minor in chemistry at Otterbein University. And I'm from Canton, Ohio.
You have pre-vet studies? So you're gonna be a big animal vet or like a cat and dog vet?
Currently cat and dog, but you know, it's up in the air.
Our dog's our older dog is 11 years old. We spent a lot of money last year. Just so you'll know. Anybody else?
It looks like Kayla was ready up in there, and then Andrew, how about that?
Yeah. Say something. Kayla. Okay, Andrew. Okay, Kayla's not gonna talk. Andrew.
No, go ahead, Caleb.
Hi, Senator Brown. My name is Kayla Servilla, and I'm a CCP student at Columbus State Community College.
College Credit Plus, high school student taking college.
Oh, wow. So where are you in high school?
I attend Olentangy Berlin High School.
Olentangy has like 4 schools now, 3 schools, high schools?
Yeah, I think Liberty, Olentangy, Orange, and Berlin, I believe.
When I lived in Columbus many years ago, there was only one high school. Good to see you, thanks. Andrew, Marietta guy.
Hi, Senator. I'm Andrew Novak. I go to school at Marietta College, and I'm zooming in from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today.
You heard about the book by the guy, the historian who just died, called The Pioneers? It's about Marietta.
Yes, David McCullough. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's worth reading.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. Our library was taken over with a lot of David McCullough Pioneers memorabilia stuff.
I would say Marietta, I probably shouldn't say this, but of every place in the state in the fall, Marietta may be the single prettiest place.
Around in like about a month or so when the leaves change color, it's absolutely gorgeous. You're right.
Anybody else? All right, well, let's get back to work.
Can we get a group photo?
What's that?
Can we get a group
Yeah, sure,
photo
I'll
with
do
you?
individual. If you want to do, we can do individual, whatever, you want a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is, so Congress, the House Act, they started to investigate like disinformation through the Department of Homeland Security. Is Senate doing anything around elections and misinformation and disinformation?
Yeah, we're doing oversight, but I mean, there's not, we kind of know what the misinformation is about elections. It's the question of, is the Justice Department going to prosecute? And what do you do to these politicians that just keep lying about it? I mean,
So what's the answer?
What's that?
What's the answer?
Well, the answer is vote them out.
Okay.
I mean, you can say as candidates, it's a free country. You can, then you can't, the line, you can't cry fire in a crowded theater, but you can stand up in a soapbox, or I can say anything I want now, and there's nothing illegal about that. But you can also vote against me in 2024 if I say awful or stupid things. So it really is a question of people just deciding, these people are lying and it's bad for our country. And I mean, you look at, one of the things as I said, I flew out, when Congresswoman Joyce Beatty from Columbus, she and I flew out together with the president of Air Force One. And, we were just talking about when the president brought us into his little office and talked about a speech he was giving today. what we have done, President and a new Congress this year, a new Senate in the House, have been, I think, the greatest accomplishments of a new president since probably Johnson in 1964 and 5. Voting rights, civil rights, creation of the Wilderness Act, Medicare, Medicaid, all the things he did. So there's a lot of huge accomplishments, and it's selling those. I mean, it's up to me, not you. You're getting people registered to vote bipartisan. But for me, it's up to us to talk about what we've done. And if we do that right, you make the contrast with who we are and what we've done with what Trump and his crowd has done. I mean, this is some Republican congressman said to me that Donald Trump is not an outlier, he's an accelerant. That this guy is a Republican. He said his party is getting, his view, I'm not gonna tell you his name, but he's not a congressman. His view is his party's getting more racist, more more sort of unmoored to democratic principles, democratic small d. And the only way to stop that is by voting in large numbers. And that's really why I'm here today, because I just think if young voters, if people, in Mount Union and BW and Columbus State and around everywhere else, if you vote in large numbers, it's going to change the country, change the world, change the country. And I have no doubt about that. All right, whoever wants to do pictures, let's do them together or individually, whatever you want to do.
We have a setup out. in the
Okay,
hallway.
if you don't mind taking a break.
Can we take 5 minutes? Can you give us until 3:02 to make sure?
Oh, gee, I like this. You have 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes, individually, group, whatever you want to do.
Let's all please come out for a group photo. That would be
And then
wonderful.
that's our program. Thank you.
She always is what you ask. You have 5.
Mr. Face.